Morning everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here for the Lead the Way event. If you'd like to come in and take your seats, we're going to get started really soon. On your way in, you'll probably see we've got a nice big exit at the back for health and safety. There's also one behind this lovely big shade that we've got here. And then if you feel the need, out through here and up the lovely steps is where the bathrooms are. Brilliant. Come on in, don't be shy. The smaller events are kind of like a plane. You know how you jostle for position with your arm? I find if you just grab a knee, just get it over and done with, the awkwardness is done. Yeah. That was a joke. Health and safety. It was a joke. Yeah. Yeah, come on in. Doesn't matter how many legs you've got. Come on through. Brilliant. Right. That looks like us. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for the Auckland leg of the Lead the Way. Now, this campaign is really, really dear to my heart. I'm a vet, over 20 years experience. I love putting things like metal plates and screws onto bones. That's what floats my boats, and taking skin and putting it somewhere else to cover up a nice little patch. So that's what gives me my jollies. But I also love native frogs. It's one of those things when you just can't work out how a creature works, that is just fascinating to me. I studied herpetology in England for 3 years, came back and found it was pretty much a wasted skill in little old New Zealand, so switched over to orthopedics and skin reconstruction. However, it's also one of those situations where we have a house in a Hopi and we have a lovely set of dogs and a beautiful little cat. We don't take the cat to the beach, but we sure do take the dogs. And there's a lot of things that going through this Lead the Way program, I realized, gosh, I need to upskill, and I'm a vet. So I got that little bit of guilt like, well, I've got to do better. But you don't know what you don't know, right? And I think that's what today's about. So PD Insurance and DOC have partnered together to bring us this Lead the Way program, which basically just makes things a little bit easier for us as responsible pet parents and dog owners, just to share the beach with the wildlife. I mean, it is possible that we can share the beach with the dotterels, with the fur seals, even the seagulls, with our dogs, and we can all get along nicely with some simple little tools that we can learn today. So really, really excited to introduce to you our panelists and our speakers. But today, I'd like to start off with Michelle Lelong. If you could come and join us, please, Michelle. So Michelle is joining us from PD Insurance. She is the Chief Operating Officer. Now, she has a stack of qualifications, far too long, but I'm going to concentrate on the highlights because they're pretty impressive. So Michelle has a proven background in executive leadership. Her previous roles span Tower, IAG, UE, and more. And Michelle is a member of the Directors Institute of New Zealand and has held multiple industry board and chairperson roles. She describes herself as being a very customer-driven and creative thinker who relishes the challenges of being a disruptor and innovator in insurance. And that is exactly what PD is doing from a vet's point of view. You get things done quicker and easier than the others, and that's from my experience. So not only from clients, but also the ones writing the notes. Thank you very much. The other thing that we have probably noticed as we're coming through here is a beautiful bulldog sitting just over here. From a guy who used to do all the brachycephalic repair operations in London. Quite excited to see Buster the British Bulldog. So without further ado, over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Stacey. You might need your expertise with his nose. Yeah. Look, I've got a script, so I've been told I have to stick to my script. I usually improvise, but thank you, Stacey, and good morning, and thanks for joining us at the pivotal Auckland Lead the Way program. So with tomorrow being International Dog Day, what better opportunity to create awareness for this program? That's as much about the happiness and health of the dogs as it is about the happiness and health of the native wildlife. Lead the Way focuses on building harmony between dogs and coastal fauna through keeping dogs happy and safe when they enjoy the coast too. To be clear, both PD and the Department of Conservation know most dog owners have positive intentions when heading out with their fur kids. As a dog owner and pet industry professional, I know almost every dog owner is an animal lover who cares deeply for the well-being of all animals. Responsible owners keep dogs away from wildlife and vulnerable other dogs and people. We take note off-lead and on-lead requirements and rules and regulations. We value exercising our dogs, but don't want them to wander into protected areas and cause any harm. However, we can be unaware of the areas to avoid and our dogs' potential impacts on the native wildlife like seals, penguins, kiwis, dotterels, and much more. Some of the risk areas might surprise you. For example, only a couple of minutes from here, there's a seriously threatened bird colony, something Paul, as our replacement for Tim, will cover shortly. Our Lead the Way aims to empower people with greater knowledge of areas to either avoid or be mindful of when enjoying the coastline for the health and safety of their dogs and of all wildlife. A dog can go from zero to zoomy in a split second. Even a small inquisitive pup that's playing can frighten seals and penguins or accidentally destroy the coasts and the birds' natural habitats. Many nest on the ground and disturbing these can make them abandon their nests. By helping educate the community, these risks and the impacts and the positive impacts we can all have by making informed decisions, the Lead the Way will hopefully achieve greater harmony for everyone who shares our coastal areas. In partnering with DOC on the Lead the Way program, PD futures our commitment to sharing information that helps improve all of New Zealand's lives. We've also been committed to educating pet parents about best practices, pet care and management. We strongly advocate for safeguarding the health of all animals, whether pets, pet owners or wildlife. It's why we have award-winning insurance products and services, we have active consumer community channels, and why we put our money where our mouth is with our local charities like Healthy Pets, Kath's here today, and Hoo-Ha, which is a no-kill shelter down in Wellington. Responsible dog owners and managing your fur baby's activity while enjoying the great outdoors is key for us helping the New Zealand wildlife survive and thrive. It's also key to helping other dogs and humans enjoy the coastline happily and safely. We can all coexist if we do the right thing. There's space for all of us to share our beaches and beyond, and we just need to follow some important steps which the program will cover. For example, we strongly urge everyone to complete the Lead the Way Wildlife Wise quiz. Test yourself and let's get to know how we can help protect our New Zealand fauna. Another step that will be helpful for all dog owners, which I know we do, is to make sure that you have on hand your dog temperament coloured code, Lead the Way. So my Buster's got, what colour have you got on, Pete? An orange. He's not necessarily needs an orange one, but he's a baby. He's a bit silly, he's not quite joined the dots up with his brain. So make sure you've got those in hand. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that, should I? Oh, he's a teenager. Yeah. So make sure you've got those when you're out and about. I'm delighted to announce that every Lead the Way lead that is purchased, a donation goes to the Bird Care Aotearoa, an Auckland charity providing care and rehabilitation for sick, injured and orphaned wildlife and wild birds. The program does of course encourage dog owners to give their dogs some free rein while outside, with the emphasis on doing so responsibly. This includes being aware we all have a legal requirement to have a lead on hand when we're out and about with our dogs. In closing, I'd like to reiterate that together we can make the coastline a better place and a fun place for all. We love dogs, we want them to live long and happy lives, and we want the same for our New Zealand wildlife. It takes a village to raise a family, and we must be that village for all our animals. Many thanks.
Thanks very much. That was a nice finish. Thanks, Michelle, and you're absolutely right. It does take a village to raise a family, and I suppose in New Zealand, we're such a small country, we can be that village. So next on our card, we have the amazing Dr. Laura Boron, who is actually our resident expert with regards to fur seals and sea lions. So pretty amazing. With a master's and a PhD in zoology studying this species, she is also Doc's resident expert with regards to everything to do fur seals and sea lions. Having grown up an animal lover and having many pets and volunteering with many various rescue groups, she then embarked on her university studies and dived into the marine realm. And after adopting her fur baby Mac back in 2015, it was very important to ensure she was doing the right thing, not only for her pup and for the marine mammals around her that her career focuses on, that she began her journey with Lead the Way. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Laura.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today to talk about two of my favorite things, dogs and wildlife. If the next slide does come up, you'll be able to see a photo of my boy Mac, who's helping me to lead the way. And as Michelle alluded to, you never know when wildlife might be right in your very own backyard. Here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we're so lucky to live in this amazing urban wildlife interface, and it's going to continue. You can see over here a photo of Ofa, the leopard seal. You might have seen her around. She's taken up residence right here in West Haven Marina. Or maybe out on your walks or out on the boat, you've noticed a few more kekeno around. New Zealand fur seals used to be plentiful around the country, numbering around about 2 million. They were hunted to near extinction for their fur back in the 1800s. But following protection under the Marine Mammals Protection Act, they've been recolonizing from south to north. So that means they've hit Tamaki Makaurau, which is fantastic news for kekeno. But we need to make sure that we are welcoming them back home safely. So Doc has 3 databases that we can use to track dog interactions with wildlife. One of these is the Compliance and Law Enforcement database. It's new and it tracks infringements nationally so that we can see where more effort might be needed in order to bring those infringements down. In the first year of its operation, since September 2020 to 2021, there were 273 dog-related infringements logged. 240 of those were of dogs in places they shouldn't be. But unfortunately, 30 were related to dogs harassing, injuring, or attacking wildlife. 7 of those were fatal. For Tamaki Makaurau, though, the most common infringement is actually dogs on offshore islands. The second database that we use is the Huia database. This is held by the vet department at Massey University, and it tracks all of the wildlife that's submitted to them to determine cause of death. In 20 years, they've averaged around about 10 animals per year that have fatal wounds consistent with dog attack. Now, this might not sound like a lot, but it's only what's submitted to them. There's a high chance that many incidents go undetected. And the most important thing to remember is that for some of these precious species, 1 or even 2 mortalities is enough to have an impact on their population. As you can see in the infographic here, the key species that are most impacted by dogs are seals and sea lions, followed by penguins, and then kiwi. All are precious New Zealand wildlife that can benefit greatly from a little more education and awareness with dog owners and the community more broadly. And that's what we're hoping to achieve with Lead the Way. And there is huge hope already. And we can see that in our third database. And that tracks all the phone calls from the public through the Doc hotline. We get on average 300 dog-related calls per year. That's nearly 1 a day. The number of attacks and fatal incidents are consistent with the other databases. But the really heartening thing is the number of calls that go like this. Hi, there's a sick seal on the beach and there's lots of dog walkers around. I'm really worried about the seal's safety. Or, I've got a gannet in my backyard. It's exhausted and disoriented. but I have a dog. What should I do? So these are just some examples of the sorts of calls that we get. And I really want to highlight the enthusiasm and the empathy that exists, in particular in this region. Which brings me to my last example of this little subantarctic fur seal pup, photographed by Michelle McKenzie. And it turned up on Snell's Beach last year around September. And the community set up seal sitters to make sure that it was safe before it went back to sea. The map inset shows where this intrepid little traveler came from. So really, Lead the Way is all about building on that care and compassion that already exists by empowering dog owners with the information to be able to protect New Zealand's native wildlife and help spread the message more broadly, so that together we can help welcome back our taonga across the Motu. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Laura. That was really informative. Seems like it's good news that we're starting the Lead the Way campaign in Auckland if all the fur seals are coming up here to visit as well. So next on our list of valued speakers, we're very, very lucky to have Paul Kennedy. Tim Lovegrove couldn't make it last minute, and Paul has very graciously stepped in to cover. Now, Paul is an environmental consultant, and he's worked in the New Zealand coastal environment for, well, ages. And he's undertaken a range of work for Auckland Council, Panuku, and Ports of Auckland and other organisations. And he's recently assisted Panuku with AC36 and aspects of the proposed Wynyard Point Park. Thanks very much, Paul.
Good morning, everybody. Just following on from Lauren talking about seals, about this time of year, we've just had one haul out in the port, climbed up Admiralty steps and tried to wander through the port. But it was looked after till it went back down into the water, but it's good to see them coming back, but I'm not going to talk about seals. I'm going to talk about probably the one bird species that most dog owners would interact with on beaches, and that's red-billed gulls, and you can hear them in the background. So most people also don't know that red-billed gulls are a threatened species, and currently they're an at-risk declining species. Now, that's arisen mostly because surveys carried out in 2016 identified that there was a fairly significant decline in the national population from about 40,000 pairs to about 20,000 pairs, mostly from the big colonies in the offshore islands, the Three Kings and up north, probably mostly caused by a reduction in their natural food supply over a couple of seasons. So there's a coastal bird species that has to deal with natural threats to its population and also to people disturbing them and the effects of, they're trying to survive on the mainland as well. And now most of our colonies are on the offshore islands, but there are colonies in a variety of places, apart from supermarket roofs, which usually get into the news. Here in Auckland, we have a small number of colonies, and they're all mostly in sort of hidden away places that most people don't know about, such as the Tamaki Bridge in the Tamaki River. There's a small colony in the port, and we have a colony that was started in the 1960s at the Percy Voss shipyard just up the road here in Hamer Street. And in about 2016, there was about 160, 70 pairs there. Now, they got quite used to people coming in and out of the shipyard parking area, and seemed to cope quite well with a bit of disturbance. Now, in 2017, with the America's Cup coming along, there had to be quite a lot of redevelopment in this area of the waterfront. And as part of that, they had to shift the ferry terminal that was just over here outside of the viaduct over into West Haven to the Percy Voss shipyard area, where they had to construct a new terminal. So that left a situation in the consenting process of having to mitigate the effect of the bird disturbance, i.e. them losing their complete colony and breeding site. And so as part of that consent, the decision was to try and move the colony. Now, there's no record of anybody having moved a colony of hundreds and hundreds of birds, ever in New Zealand. And so the decision was made at the end of the 2018 breeding season, at the end of February, when the last birds had flown away, that the construction team came straight on and got most of the on-site building work done, such that when the birds came back, there wasn't anywhere for them to go there. So they started to mill around the old location, wondering what to do. But we'd put a set of decoys in a site just up the road and hope that they would see them. And within a couple of days, there were birds that had lighted onto the new site and were sitting around the decoys. And so from there, by another 2 or 3 weeks, most of the birds had turned up there, and they bred very successfully on the strip of land that had been prepared for them. Now, they've bred successfully now for 3 seasons, to the point that at the end of last season, there were over 1,400 birds at the site. So, and that was a good breeding season. 600 birds were reared at the site last year. And already, slightly earlier than normal, as of last week, there were over 1,000 birds at the site. So we'd assume that by the time we get to December, when they're fully into nest and egg laying, that there'll be more than 1,500 birds there. The key thing here is that that colony will hopefully be part of the Wynyard Point Park, and hopefully, with all the development that goes on Wynyard Point, that will become an educational focus and allow people to see one of the more common bird species within an urban setting in Auckland, and hopefully will get used by schools a lot. So thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks very much, Paul. That's a fascinating fact to how you move the colony, and it sort of highlights how something seemingly simple like some decoys can actually be so important in actually transferring a pretty significant colony and actually saving their lives. It's kind of the same way as lead the way, something pretty simple, but it could have far-reaching, really important effects. And it's probably the perfect way to move into our more interactive part of the session today. And I'd love to invite our panel of experts to come and answer some pretty hard-hitting questions. But it's really going to bring across how Lead the Way is going to just benefit everything that we're trying to achieve here with sharing the coastline. So first up, we have Dr. Kath Watson, who most significantly was 2 years ahead of me at vet school. She is the chair of Healthy Pets New Zealand. It's the only New Zealand charity that supports research and education into the improved health and welfare for Kiwi pets. Oh, you're doing well. Now, Kath has been a practicing companion animal clinical veterinarian since 2000 and currently travels the country as a locum, although was too busy to come to Rotorua when we needed her most. She's worked in a range of practices in New Zealand and the UK as a locum, an employee and a business owner. Kath's been active within the New Zealand Veterinary Association and the NZ Vet Council and has held a number of roles over many years and done a really good job on all of them. She has a passion for the outdoors and can be found tramping, biking, skiing, kayaking, planting and pest trapping whenever she's not working. Although Kath doesn't currently have any pets at the moment, she's a proud pet mum to a cat named Willow, and is also usually covered in pet fur from other people's fur kids, like pretty much every vet in New Zealand. Welcome, Kath. Next, joining us via Zoom is Dr. Lynn Miller, CWR, and she is the General Manager of Bird Care Aotearoa, a well-known charity based in Green Bay that's dedicated to providing care and rehabilitation for sick, injured and orphaned wild birds. She is the only person in New Zealand with a certified wildlife rehabilitator qualification, which is an international qualification that obligates her to do a significant number of hours of continuing education and to uphold the code of ethics that guides wildlife rehabilitation. She's also one of less than a handful of people globally with a PhD directly involved in wildlife rehabilitation. While doing her PhD, Lynn developed a technique to use in oil spills that may indicate whether the level of toxic assault on the bird is such that it cannot survive. She's owned several dogs and a cat, and the last of which was an outgoing lab named Monty, who unfortunately passed on 6 years ago, and she still misses every day. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Lynn. Next is Dr. Sarah Alexander, maybe down in your programs as the resident Auckland Zoo representative. She is no longer a resident, she has fully earned her PhD. and despite having a touch of imposter syndrome, is the absolute expert in everything to do with tuatara. She recently disclosed to me earlier not to ask her any Māori names because she feels very embarrassed when she doesn't do a good job of pronouncing them later. While taking care of a wide variety of animals at Auckland Zoo, something she's done on and off for a few years now, Sarah did complete her doctorate on the fungal diseases in tuatara and reptiles endemic to New Zealand. So thank you that an Australian has come to sort out our native iguana. She's also been lucky enough to provide veterinary support for Doc, out in the field programs with kakapo, takahe and kiwi amongst others, and is passionate about helping people learn about protecting our native taonga. Sarah is not only has a soft spot for her native wildlife, she's a keen pet sitter for her mum's golden retriever by lab, Nato. Cool name. And last but not least, we are very lucky to have certified dog behaviour consultant Maria Alamahan, who is stepping in for us because Mark couldn't make it today. So at last minute, we are very lucky to have someone as qualified as you, Maria. To give you a taste of those qualifications, Maria is an accredited dog trainer with the International Association of Animal Behaviour Consultants, as well as the Companion Animals Professional Dog Trainers. Plus, she's the only practicing canine emotional detox trainer. And as someone who's right into mental health for our industry, I think that's really important across species. Yeah. Now, Maria primarily works on complex behaviour cases and enjoys delving deep into the internal and external world of dogs, which often means teaming up on cases with other trainers, behaviour consultants and vets. Unsurprisingly, she had plenty of pets in the past and is currently a dog parent to Pedro the puppy. Yeah. Is it because he's naughty, Maria?
Yeah, it's because he's a very happy puppy.
Yes, yeah. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move into the question and answer session. We need to keep these answers pretty brief. So nice, succinct answers, and we're going to get right into them. So our first question here, what species of wildlife or animals should we watch out for, and what preferred habitats, and why are they so important to protect?
So I'm gonna field that one. So we do see quite a lot of penguins and seals. So forgive me, kekeno and korero, something similar. Yes. And we see those at the zoo from various types of injuries. So sometimes they are human or dog related. The other birds that we do see a lot that we're really concerned about are the critically endangered ones. So ones that nest on the shore and that any disturbance by a dog can really affect their population. So things like your New Zealand dotterels, your fairy terns, even the odd kiwi that manages to make its way onto the beach. And I think one of the things that we don't always appreciate is that us as humans might not see those species, but dogs have super keen sense of smell and eyesight. They will know that the animal is there, and especially our little birds, they will know that the dog is there even if we don't see it, and that can, even if they're not directly injured, that can increase their stress levels, and that can really impact their health and their breeding ability.
Very good, Sarah. Dr. Lynn, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, well put, by the way. We do also have to think about some of the displays that are going to even attract more attention. And one of them would be something like the broken wing display that we see in some species. So your dogs are just going to cue in on some of the cues that the birds are giving to the dogs as well. And so it's really important. And that's where I'm so excited about this program, that people are going to be encouraged to use appropriate coloured leashes, and also to really protect their own birds as much as possible, their own dogs around these birds as much as possible, because these things can escalate into really unhappy situations, as we all know by getting our patient load in. And of course, burrowing, snuffling around a burrow can be really disastrous as well. So again, keeping your fur babies under control by using appropriate leashes and walking away from areas that may be problematic, very important.
Yeah. No, so important, and especially with the terns. I mean, basically it's just a divot in the sand, and that's their nest. So yeah, even a snuffle or a walk over that has destroyed the entire nest. So no, really important.
The fairy terns, the population is something like 40 birds. So any kind of interaction with a pet can really affect the whole population.
Yeah, so important, and that segues nicely into question 2, which is, we've basically heard all about the usually unintentional harm caused to birds, penguins, seals, all of our coastal wildlife by people, dogs, and other animals along the coastline. Could you share some of your experiences with rehabbing the rescues? Perhaps we should start with you, Dr. Lynn, and just your experience in this area.
Sadly, I have one to share from just 2 days ago. It was a red-billed gull that came in. It had had a dog interaction. The wing was essentially ripped off. And of course, the most humane treatment we can offer is euthanasia in that case. And all I can ask is people to understand that these animals have the same neural networks that we do. They feel pain just the same as we do, it's just they don't scream. And I'd really like people to understand that, your dogs do not mean to hurt them, but unfortunately they're a whole lot bigger. And these birds are going to try and get away, so they're going to elicit more of a chase response. And even just jumping on these birds is enough to break bones. So we see these, unfortunately, all the time, including also flippers from penguins, a beautiful little wee blue kororo, where those chewed off, crush injuries, things like that. So the more that we as responsible dog owners can encourage everybody else to be responsible, we reduce a whole lot of pain and suffering, and hopefully help protect some of those incredibly vulnerable breeding populations that are out there.
And the other one that we hear quite a lot about in the media is seals and penguins. Has anyone had any experience having to rehab any of those?
Yeah, so at the zoo we do see New Zealand fur seals come in, and we had one only a few months ago that was around a wharf, looking very, very skinny, paying a bit too much attention to people as well. And it was brought in, and unfortunately, again, as is often the case with wildlife, by the time they get to us, they're really, really sick. And that animal had a lot of complications from various injuries and other problems going on with it. And again, it had to be euthanized. We do see penguins with flipper injuries fairly commonly. Unfortunately, when penguins, and it's often an amputation injury, similar to what Lynn has seen, and those animals can't be released back into the wild. Luckily at the zoo, we do actually have a colony of penguins, mostly that are broken in some way or another, that have been taken into captivity to live with us because they couldn't survive in the wild. But other ones that we do see occasionally that most people aren't aware of are things like our little native skinks and geckos. So they're animals that are really unique to New Zealand, but most people don't even know about. And they're such cool little creatures, but a little chomp from a dog that's not even, trying to be malicious, is just an animal that's curious, can be fatal for these little animals.
That predation instinct is just something that we've got to manage through this program. Yeah. But again, I think it probably leads us to a slightly different question, but maybe Maria, could you tell us about how poorly trained dogs, and I just want to make it clear that is not, we're not talking about all dogs, it's just those that aren't potentially trained or managed that well, but how are they involved in the disturbance of our coastal wildlife?
I'll just add to that also, it's not all just poorly trained dogs or dogs that aren't being actively managed when they're out. It can also be well-trained dogs that have become over-aroused, that have been allowed to it's gone from fun to frantic. It can be adolescent dogs that you've trained really well as a little puppy, but they've become a teenager and they don't listen as well. Or it can be a dog who lives at the beach, but you've been overseas for a month, has been in the kennels, and suddenly it's come back and doesn't want to listen to you. So there's a whole range of scenarios that go into a reason why your dog perhaps isn't going to listen to you, which in that instance, we really want you to be present with your dog and to manage, just to be mindful and just think, here's my dog. I'm not sure who's out on the beach today. I'm not sure what animals are there. And I've got my tools with me so that I can either keep them on the long line, keep them on the lead till I know if there's any other wildlife around or any other dogs. And so that you're prepared, because the effect to the wildlife, which experts can attest to, but also to the dogs, because, you know, the worst case scenario is that your dog will be euthanized for attacking wildlife, and that is something that no dog owner wants.
Well said.
Yeah.
And I guess, Kath, that's probably where an organisation like yours comes in, like just trying to promote the health of our pets as well, all through New Zealand. And I guess the first stage is protecting them from the things that they don't really realise that they're going to be doing.
Yeah, that's right. And it's understanding that at the end of the day, we have dogs as our companions, and we have a responsibility to make sure that our companions behave well, and whether that's our dogs or our kids. It actually comes down to making sure that we set some ground rules and keep some consistency, because nobody likes being told off, whether you're a human or a dog. So having that ability to control your dog, using your tools, having your lead on you all the time, knowing what motivates your dog, and encourage it to understand the rules, then you've got a much better chance of keeping everybody safe, including the dog.
100%. And we all know that prevention is always better than cure. So how can we collectively work together to raise well-behaved dogs that protect our native animals? Like, what would be the two key things that we could take away that we could just use tomorrow?
3.
You can do 4 if you like.
Well, starting at the beginning of the dog's life, early socialization during their imprinting stage, which is up until they're kind of 4 months old, so that they learn that other animals and people and other dogs are not to be interfered with, and that they have a positive interaction with those things. Training, so there's some really basic training. Nice lead walking. And the reason I say nice lead walking is because so many people let their dogs free run because their dogs walk badly on a lead. And so if we start with a nice lead walking, people are going to put their dogs on a lead and then extend that. You can extend that out to a long line, which is, 5 meters, 10 meters. So your dog has more freedom, but you've got some control and you can get them out of danger. Leave it is a huge cue that will save your dog's life. If you can teach your dog to, especially if they're at a distance, because it's not just the wildlife, but it's toxins, it's food, it's running over the rocks and cutting their paws. It's all these things that can endanger our dogs when they're out. So if you can ask your dog to leave it and then have a recall, which is the next thing that we want, a great recall will help save your dog's life. And one more, and be present. I'm just so passionate about this. Be present with your dog. When you're out with your dog, I'm probably going to get cursed for saying this, but don't have a coffee and be chatting to your friends. Be mindful that this is your dog's time to be with them. And so if you see your dog's tail go up, if they stop, if they lift their nose and start sniffing, hook up. That is the time, because your dog will be telling you what they're interested in the environment. And I so often see people that are just not actually present with their dogs when they're out. That's a big passion of mine.
No, and it comes across well, Maria. So those basic commands? Yep.
Leave it, nice lead walking, come.
Brilliant.
Yeah, you don't have to, if people start getting worried that they're going to have to put hours and hours of training into all these specialty cues, it doesn't have to be that difficult.
No, and that's Pareto's principle, the whole 80-20 thing all over. Look, there's 3 things just right there that could make 80% of the difference straight away.
Save your dogs and save the wildlife.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Lynn, I can see you nodding away there too. Would you be able to share any other tips we could follow to reduce our dogs' impact on coastal wildlife?
I think it's been well put just there. Be present. I think that's the whole part of it. Is we tend to go off into a little moments of reverie, and of course the ever-present cell phone is an incredibly seductive attraction, and it leads to those momentary lapses of attention. And it's being present. I think that's actually an awesome thing to think about, and that the leash, of course, is part of that whole process, isn't it? Being present, being connected, and really you are responsible for your pup, your fur baby. And believe me, I've had the experience of just being so passionate about mine that, they're everything to me. So totally understand. But I love exactly what you just said. It was brilliant.
And I think that focus on presence is really important. I mean, from a parent's point of view, when your kids want to go and play fetch and they're throwing it into the sand dunes, well, being aware now of the damage that could cause, again, instead of being on a cell phone, be aware of what your kids and dogs are doing at the same time. Even to the point of checking the local guidelines before you go. I mean, the signs are put up, they go out of date. Check the website before we go to the beaches, which is the other one that I've learned recently as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, native wildlife aren't the only ones in danger, are they? So what hazardous things can our dogs find along the coast when they're wandering?
Heaps of things.
I saw that smile.
And this is where, understanding that your dog has an incredible sense of smell, eyesight's probably better than ours as well. They will go and find stuff that you don't even know that's there. Some of that's going to be natural stuff, so dead fish, dead birds washed up, vegetation, things like karaka berries, which can be fatal to dogs, sea slugs, but actually things like rubbish, unfortunately. This world we live in with all the disposable stuff, we end up with a bunch of rubbish out there that dogs find fascinating. They love to scavenge, and some dogs unfortunately love to scavenge and eat. When they get really highly aroused, some dogs end up digging frantically, or going having a great big drink of salt water, even eating the sand. All of those things can cause problems. Sometimes it might be nothing happens at all. Sometimes your dog might end up a wee bit sick and recovers, but actually worst case scenario, something like a karaka berry or a sea slug, you could end up with a dead dog. So being aware of where they are all the time, understanding their cues, learning the language between you and your dog, that's, as Maria said earlier, be present.
Just on a personal, those karaka berries are bad news. The problem with them is that, you might eat one or two, and they're only about 2 centimetres long, beautiful and orange, but that could take 24 to 48 hours for the signs to actually show up. And when they show up, and we, as the vets, we know that the solution to pollution is dilution. Well, you are diluting those poor dogs from every which angle you can imagine, and everything you're imagining right now, we had to do all of that. So they are bad news, let alone everything else that we could do, just clogging up intestines and needing surgery. So we do have to be aware.
Saving lives is expensive. I'm not going to make any apology for that. And the unexpected happens. Maybe you should think about pet insurance.
Definitely not even think about it, have pet insurance.
Well, we joke, but just for peace of mind, it is one thing you don't want to be making a split-second decision when you've got minutes to make a decision and you're dealing with thousands of dollars. So actually, it's a very practical option. Now, the Lead the Way program promotes the use of different coloured leads that explain dog temperaments. And we've seen some pretty good examples already, although everyone kind of deserves a green lead at the moment. I don't think I've heard a peep out of anyone. And we also know that off-lead dogs that aren't well managed can cause issues with dogs that aren't social or vulnerable in some way. So what do we need to be mindful of as dog owners about better managing the interactions between dogs? And what about the interactions between dogs and people who aren't so comfortable with dogs? Maria, I think that'd be a great place to start.
I am also an advocate for being polite, and I think that and being mindful of whether it's on the beach or down the footpath or something, if there are people that haven't solicited or look like they wanted to engage with your pet, call your pet away or move them away. And it's the same thing with dogs. If your dog is off the lead and you see a dog on lead, don't let your dog run up to them. That dog is on the lead for a reason, and that dog is then confined by that lead, whereas your dog is not, and that causes a whole load of communication issues between dogs. I think that, again, the people that use nature, I don't know how to put this nicely, but I know people will take dogs to the beach, because they love chasing the birds, and that drains their energy, or that is also draining all the energy from those birds. And that's a really critical piece of information that I think dog owners need to know. That's not the way that you exercise your dog, and you're causing a great amount of harm burning up the energy, which is a limited resource for the wildlife. They need that energy for resting, nesting, flying, sourcing food. I think that's important. I bought this long line when we're talking about dog-dog interactions. You know, people think that dogs need to be free running all the time. That's not a very natural, it's a pet dog concept that we've created because we keep them inside all the time. Dogs in a free roaming society, village dogs, street dogs, don't go for runs. It's not a natural behaviour for dogs. So they don't need to be doing it. And I mean, they need to get out and exercise and walk, but they don't need to be running frantically, over-aroused, up and down the beach all the time. And it's perfectly fine. And my little puppy, who maybe I should have bought to example this, full of energy, he's a little black staffy and he loves everyone. He's perfectly happy on his long line at the beach as he is free running in the water, because he gets called back, he has reinforcement. You know, there's alternative reinforcement for him rather than just the environment that he's in. And then for dog people, for dog people, there are things like the Ignore My Dog campaign. Dogs in need of space. There are some great programs out there that can help assist with keeping dogs safe on the coastlines as well.
Good, thorough answer, Maria. Thank you so much. But it is true. Yeah. And I think all the helpful tips that we're receiving today for all of us, I mean, I'm trying to take this all in as well. It's brilliant. But this is the stuff that we can use now, like real life tools that we need to be using straight away. And it probably leads us to the last question, which if possible, I'd love each of you to take an answer on this one, and we can get your perspective on how things work. But the Lead the Way program is all about empowering people with the right information so that they can enjoy and share the coastline mindfully. What positive impact would it make to native wildlife if we all led the way by being wildlife wise? And I'm going to add a little bit to that. What is the best way to get wildlife wise? Kath, could we start with you?
Sure. As far as the benefit to the wildlife, this is their home. You know, we are essentially invading their home, their lifestyle, and the way they live their lives. So we need to be mindful of that. So, you know, I think there's some golden rules we can stick to, and the first is, if in doubt, keep them out, keep them away, keep them on a lead, keep them under control, and take heed of what's going on around the place. If they are free running, then slip on a lead. And I guess the really big thing is that we want our wildlife to stay. They're unique to New Zealand. They're important to part of who we are. So we have the opportunity here. We need to take the lead. And this Take the Lead campaign, I think, or Lead the Way campaign, is a fantastic place to go and find that information about what you can do to help the wildlife and what you can do to help keep your dog safe as well.
Thanks, Kath. Sarah, we might go with you next, if that's okay.
I mean, I think there's, when it comes to the wildlife, there are so many things that they will benefit from with having more pets under control. Obviously, there's the individual animal welfare themselves, so they're not at risk of injury. They're less at risk of being stressed out and that impacting them physiologically and mentally, but also just conservation of them in general. So the individual animals, the impacts on the populations, like we've said previously, the things like our little dotterels and our fairy terns who have such tiny critically endangered populations anyway, any control that's going to help preserve those animals is going to have a huge impact on those. So the Lead the Way campaign in itself has the ability, even though it's not, you know, directly interfering with wildlife, that has the ability on its own to really beneficially impact our wildlife populations.
Beautifully said, Sarah. And Maria, a quick word from you?
I said no.
And to be fair, you've got a little presentation that you've got to go to. Dr. Lynn, can we finish with you, please?
Thank you. Well, first, I want to just thank the panelists here, because you're all awesome, and you've really said it all. From my perspective, of course, the fewer patients coming in with these types of injuries will make my team a lot happier, because the outcomes are often so devastating to us. But there's suffering. more joy in the environment around us. It all goes hand in hand. And I really hope that Lead the Way is going to be the way to go. I really commend you to take this head start on, encouraging responsible, or many of us who are very responsible pet owners, to maybe get another tool in our kit and make things a bit easier, especially around our wildlife. So thank you so much, everybody, for contributing. I really appreciate it. And I've learned a lot too. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Lynn. And I think you're right. It's about getting as many tools in our toolkits that we can use to actually achieve the purpose of sharing the beach safely as we can get. And panelists, your expert opinions and the insights are just phenomenal. I mean, I'm standing over here just trying to absorb it all and going, oh, there's another piece of gold. And I'm sure everyone here is too. So I thought what we'd do now is we'd open it up to the floor so that we can ask any question to our resident experts up here. Sorry, not resident, full experts up here. But that also includes our specialist speakers as well. So keynote speakers and our panelists. Let's hear what those nuggets of gold have to come flow freely now. Who'd like to start?
I'd like to know what the decoy was. What do you mean by decoy? Is it fake food on the split? What is it? Decoy?
Yeah, they were 3D printed.
Yeah.
Exactly like
So literally up on the split.
No, they were setting up the
Oh.
yeah, no, they're actually no, they were none there.
No, the next to the decoy.
Yeah. Sorry for the guys on the right.
Actually, Paul, I had a question about that too. Did you need to use anything sensory like smells or anything like that, or was it all visual?
No, sometimes you use some tapes as well to help bring other birds in for different species. But and this decoys used quite a lot. They've been used as spotted shacks and dogs that comes in it, and other species as well. No, mostly it's just the visual track.
Yeah. I just thought it was pretty amazing how you completely moved the colony just over.
Well, the main thing was it wasn't too far. There's a distance by which it would become harder and harder to make them know that they should go there. But they could probably, when they went to the old site, they could probably see the other gulls out of the corner of their eye.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That peripheral vision. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Alex Bonham. I'm on the Waitemata local board, and I was really interested in this presentation today. And I'm sorry, it's not really a question, it's more of a request to Paul, but all of you would be very welcome. I wondered if you could perhaps present to our local board about this, because we advocate very strongly for more wildlife habitat, and we do have a little bit of a say over what happens at Wynyard Point. And it would be wonderful for my colleagues to hear what you've got to say. And I was told about the event by Jessica Rose, who is look, well, she's not in this area. She's another politician type like me. But I just want to say that we didn't know as the Waitemata local board, and it's so important that we do, so that we can try and make the change when necessary. So I'm giving you my card, and I'm really hoping that perhaps you will get in touch again with us. And I'm very sorry I have to leave now. Thank you.
And that is how you network. Straight in, get the point across and get out of there. Yeah. Well, does anyone else have any pressing questions? Because I know there's Dr. Corey sitting in the back who's always got questions. Should we go straight to you, Corey?
We've been talking today about some of those really key tips that you've got for pet owners. Is there any key times of the year to be more mindful when we talk about the beach and some of the wildlife? You've mentioned some of the fur seals today, some of the bird wildlife. Is there anything in particular, probably most of the time of the year there's going to be something around, but some of those really key times that we want to try to avoid for our pet owners?
So I can do some wildlife stuff. Oh yeah, go.
You're right in that it's probably most of the year, but it depends on what species. And so a bit of it's about being mindful about, okay, in winter, this is when, because most of the fur seals that we have around here are haul outs. There's not, we're not really aware of any breeding colonies really close by at the moment. So it's going to be the animals that are not tied to a breeding colony. So they increase in number over winter. So with fur seals, you can kind of assume that this time of year is when you're going to see them. But then there's going to be other times of year that are important for other species. Probably a lot of the bird species that might be breeding or nesting more in the spring, summer timeframes. So it's kind of be alert for different things at different times of the year.
Probably one of the things is expect the unexpected and talk to other beachgoers, people who are coming off the beach or the coastline anywhere really, because it's not just beaches obviously, but ask them what they've seen so you're aware. Maybe even take a pair of binoculars so you can see stuff in the distance, because like I say, your dog's going to pick them up before you do, and cue off them.
Some of the other things we tend to see in winter, we get a lot of storm-blown animals. So when we have storms, we often end up with sea turtles stranded on the beach. And obviously they can't move on the beach much at all. And so your dogs are going to go straight for those. The other thing that we see, we saw a couple only about a month ago when we had that really big storm, was we had a royal albatross and a light-mantled albatross actually come into people's backyards. So they were exhausted from the storms. They really couldn't move. They certainly couldn't fly away. And obviously a backyard is a dog's home as well. But if you have control over your dog and you're able to say, oh, leave it or come here, then those birds that are probably where you wouldn't expect them do have a better chance.
Oh, a question over here.
In terms of wildlife that's injured, are dogs the biggest priority for our focus? In terms of, I think you said 7. In terms of what's reported, are cats an issue as well, or is it mostly dogs?
Cats, yes, are definitely an issue. However, at this point, we don't have the legislation in New Zealand that's going to allow us to control cats as perhaps we would like. We're focusing on dogs because at the end of the day, in this Lead the Way campaign, we have an opportunity here to become more responsible, more aware of how our behaviour and our companions' behaviour, be that cats, be that dogs, be it our kids, has the impact that has on wildlife. So if we start with dogs, I think that's a really good place to be. And I think down the track, yeah, we'd love to see some more controls around cats because they absolutely have an impact on our wildlife.
And I think I can add a little bit of texture to that as well. 36% of the patients that are received of the nearly 7,000 birds that come into Bird Care Aotearoa are cat bites or cat interactions. That's huge. And of that, we can probably only save about 20%. So they're huge. So maybe the Lead the Way will be, after this awesome campaign, is Lead the Way to a catio campaign. And who knows, we might be meeting again in a year and talking about catio designs. But in the meantime, I do know that this will be a really exciting move, and I just so applaud everybody involved. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the lovely Maria? Because she has an extra task that she's got to do in a short while. Any tips of gold for Maria?
How long do we have to, you said at the training, the commands that we have to use, the basic ones, how much time do you think a dog owner needs to put in that training that's so important to keep your dog under control?
If you can consistently put in 5-10 minutes a day, you're going to see huge feedback. So it doesn't need to be a lot, which is where people kind of get put off. And people are busy. I'm really realistic with my clients. People are busy. So, 5-10 minutes a day, every day. And all your interactions with them is another thing, because you're interacting with your animals or with your dogs all the time. It's just getting into that mindset that every interaction is a teaching moment, so come get your dinner, or just simple things like that. Leave it with your dinner and then, okay, you can have your dinner. All those types of things that you can just remember to put into day-to-day life give you huge payoff.
Thanks, Maria. I'll ask you to come and start getting ready for your beautiful
Speaking of
presentation. Do we have any more questions from the floor? Any burning desires? I know you've got some out there. Oh, yes. No, it's all right. It's not an auction. I'll just... Well, I actually had a question. I was just trying to be polite. But Dr. Lynn, so when I was in England, I was actually working as the main herpetology vet. So I got to operate on a lot of reptiles and pulled a remote control car out of a snake once. I also worked alongside a particularly good avian vet who was studying to be a specialist. The thing that I always thought that I was quite lucky about is I could control my patients' temperature and environment with vivariums, and I could manipulate their environment pretty well to get a good outcome. She didn't have that luxury, and we always thought that she had the hardest job in the department or in the building. What are the main challenges you see in your rehabilitation of birds in particular, and how difficult it is?
Well, for a start off, there's not one size that fits all for all species, and we're so aware of that, and you will know that with your reptile practice. I have to say, I actually worked for Jaime Samor when he was the vet at London Zoo, and our beat was mostly birds and reptiles. So I've spent a lot of time working around reptiles as well through my years. The only one I won't handle is a mamba, I have to tell you that. So please, if you get one in the country, don't ask me to come and sort it out. The thing with birds is that we've so little understood their anatomy and physiology, and so therefore we're sort of slowly playing catch up through the years as we learn more and more about these individual animals and what do they need. And so this has been some of my work as a researcher, and just trying to understand how we can better care for our animals in these incredible avifauna that we're being asked to care for on a daily basis. One of the things that we need to understand is that they always come in dehydrated, and that is a huge problem. So if we can get them into care as fast as possible, the deleterious effects, those really awful effects from being so dehydrated, we can get on top of those much quicker. And of course, we've also got to understand that every species group is very different. And so our seabirds, the ones that they are going to be most disturbed around our shorelines, actually have very specific needs. And because of that, they have to have specialist care. We're working on that, and I'm so proud to say our team at Bird Care are doing an awesome job with seabirds and pulling things through that many other facilities are having difficulties with. So I'm just very proud of our team, but it's always a challenge. The best thing is always get them in as fast as possible, protect their waterproofing as much as possible. Don't pick them up with your hands, especially if you've got things like sunscreen or sunblock on your hands. It destroys waterproofing. And then we'll start the stabilization process once they come in. But it's always a challenge. And it's trying to lump everything in. And anybody who works with dogs knows you can't lump them into one group of dogs or canids either, can you? Birds are exactly the same. So if nothing else, just remember they're all different.
No, thanks, Dr. Lynn. And you're right, it's the same in mammals. I mean, if we can get speed of treatment initiated soon, dehydration is always the enemy you're trying to fight along with shock. So it sounds like there's similarities there, but I guess the key question for us is where do we go when we need that sort of help? And it sounds like you've got a great facility going there. I would imagine that any funding we could get towards you would be very helpful as well.
I can't help but reinforce that. We are facing crunches all the time, and unfortunately, we are not getting smaller in the need. The need is getting huge. So in the 3.5 years since I've been here, we've gone from about a 5,000 bird intake up, we'll hit 7,000 this year. And we are doing an awesome job, but we need your support. So thank you very much for making this possible. I'm really delighted to be here.
Thanks, Dr. Lynn. Now, do we have any more burning questions from the floor? Lydia. I think it's this one.
If I was to see a bird on the beach that maybe looked a bit unwell, or maybe even a seal, what should I do?
So call the doc hotline and they'll be able to assess whether it needs any attention, be able to transport it to a rehabber or to the zoo for us to look after it. So doc definitely a first protocol.
And tell everyone else that you see coming on the beach to stay away. Don't stress them more than they need to be stressed.
Nice question to finish off, I think. Nice practical one. What do? We call doc. So on that note, I think we have oh no, we're definitely keen then. So we've got a nice dog behavioural presentation from Maria. So if you'd all like to make your way gently out to the enclosure beside. I don't think we need this anymore, eh? Well done, guys. You did awesome.
With a border collie and tell you what the dog can do. And I'm like, Buster. Oh, yeah, good decision. Good boy. So I thought what we'd do is I'll just give you a little demo of nice lead walking, which then turns into recall and how we start training leave it. Because a lot of people will, I see them, they're like saying to their dog, leave it. And the dog's like, sorry? They're like, oh, well, when it leaves it, then I'll give it something. And I'm like, well, you haven't actually taught it how to leave and what might be a more reinforcing behaviour for the dog. So, Buster, you're such a good boy. So people really struggle with lead walking, which doesn't need to be complicated. Buster, oh, you're so good. You're such a good dog. You're the best dog. And the simple rule is being next to you needs to be more reinforcing than all the other competing reinforcers in the environment. So it sounds simple, and it is simple. And we use food, primary reinforcer, to give the dog the information they need as to where they should be. So right now you should be there. Perfect. You're a great dog. Come with me, Buster. Good boy. Come on, you're making some great decisions today, buddy. Nice walking. Come on. I've got some here. Come on. That's a lovely down. We're still moving. Come on. What? Oh, come on, Papa. Good boy. What a good boy. You're such a good boy. Good boy. Papa. Good boy. So good. And that's why I love working with or doing a demonstration with a dog I don't know, because they're going to throw behaviours up at me that I have to think about on the run, which your pets will do, particularly because they're so familiar with you. Oh, that's perfect. Buster, you are such a good dog. Buster, your walking is amazing. I bet you walk like this all the time. Buster, good decision. Buster, come. Good boy. Buster, come. Oh, you're a great dog. So I'm dropping my long line so that we can start to move into some recall. I set this up earlier. Buster, come. Good boy. Good one. You are such a great dog. Look at you go. Good boy. Good boy. Oh, but tangled. Good boy. Nice work. Buster, come. Good boy. You're such a good boy. Come on. Come on, buddy. Come. Yes. Oh, you're such a good boy. You are such a good boy. Buster's the best dog in the world. Yes, I talk like this all the time. Actually, I talk like this all the time. So now I'm losing stuff. Now I'm like, oh, I feel pretty happy that I've got his attention. I don't feel like he's going to run away. I'm dropping the long line. This is like a speedy version of what you would do, because obviously if you suddenly took him into the car park, this wouldn't be exactly what went on. You're a great dog. Good boy. Good boy. Every dog that's still alive is motivated by food. And I say that because my lovely mentor, Dr. Susan Friedman, is like, if your dog's alive, your dog's eating, which means they're motivated by food. So it depends on, this is chicken. Buster, come. Yes, you're the best dog. You're the best dog, yes. So if you call him, so he's gone off to say hello to a stranger. Buster, come. Yeah, you're the best. You are the best. You've got the best recall of any, you've got the best recall of any bulldog on the beach. Who else do you want to say hello to? Oh, sorry, buddy, I dropped that. Oh, good boy. So, and the reason that I use all these huge amounts of foods here, like sausages and chicken, is because it's really high value. So the behavior that we're asking our dogs to do is not natural behavior. Dogs don't have to do all these things when they're free roaming. And what we're giving them has to be equally or more reinforcing than the environment. Something that I won't give them all this in case you're worried, in case the vets are looking at me, cheesy Cheerios. But something for people that have dogs, puppies in particular, that are really super easily distracted. Things like this are great to have because we can hold it and they can kind of nibble, and we can just teach them that this is where we'd like you to be. This is really reinforcing. Just hanging out next to me, you're gonna get all this yummy stuff. So then if mum calls you, sorry, I'm really setting you up here. Mum. Ah, yes! Primo! Ta-da! Come on, buddy, come on. So that's kind of the process we go through when we're teaching. When we're teaching nice lead walking, recall, and then obviously you would take this somewhere where it's safe. So like a primary school yard where they have really good fencing, a tennis court, and you start to learn your dog, and you get feedback from them as to when they're going to listen or when it's going to be too hard. And when it's too hard, just hook them up. You know, he's fine. He's perfectly happy doing all this. And have I got time? Oh, okay. I'm like, oh, I talk a lot. And I thought what I would do is just also demonstrate how we start teaching Leave It, as I was saying before. So this is how I do it. And there's lots of different ways of doing it. But it's very simple. Is I just put some food in my hand and I wait for him to stop trying to get it. Can you leave it? Yes. Oh, well, there was a moment when he pulled back. And the key thing, you know, when we're working with our dogs is patience. You know, we're trying to teach them unnatural behaviors when we don't share a language. So he's like, oh, that's really, really super delicious, but I've got no idea how to get it. The most efficient way for me to get it is just to go through the hand. You are such a good boy. Yes, good boy. So did you just see the little bit when he stopped? So when they're doing that, kind of pull back proficiently, then we add in the cue. There's no point in saying leave it, leave it, leave it, because leave it doesn't mean anything. Oh, you did it. You're the best student. He's a great student. I told you he was smart. So then we add in the cue. So I've got the sausage, leave it. Yes, good boy, good boy. And so this is how we start teaching them the concept of leave. I like leave it to mean exactly what he did naturally, which was I'll kind of pull back and sit back. so that if it is food scraps or sea slugs or a baby seal or anything like that, it's not just that they've stopped there, they've stepped back from that. And then we can progress. Should we see how you do, mate? Leave it. I know this looks a bit aversive. Yes, thank you, buddy. So the second that he took his mouth away from my hands, I'm like, that's what you do. And dogs are just phenomenally smart, so smart. They will process really quickly. What did I need to do? Good one. That was nice leaving. So he knew that I had it then, and then he's gone into a down because I'm chitty-chatting. Leave it. I know, it's so hard. Yes, good boy. Good papa. Good papa. You are so good. Oh, immediately. If you're not using a clicker, more than 3 seconds. So you need to be getting in with the reinforcers within 3 seconds for the dog to correlate behaviour with reinforcer. If you're using a clicker, which I thought would just add too much confusion, that kind of gives you up to 10 seconds. So that's much easier. You are just the best dog. Good boy. Leave it. Leave it. Yes, good boy. So the thing is, when you start out, it doesn't technically look like a big leave it, but just no contact on the hand is slowly just, you know, you're incrementally teaching them how to receive the reinforcer, really, and how to offer the behaviour. You are so good. I feel like we should give you a drink. Excuse me, I'll just get this. Here we go, buddy. Here we go.
Maria, you're starting with Buster from scratch.
Yes. I don't. I just met Buster. Yeah. Yeah. And he likes it. Oh, yeah. No, sorry. Because one of the dogs that we actually have, and Karen in particular, has done a lot of leave it work with at a distance, just got pancreatitis yesterday. So she's very, very sick. So I'm sorry about that. Little Molly, so she was unable to come today. The other two dogs, Bert is the same, he has the same kind of recall. I can kind of introduce leave it with him. I'll give you back your, now there's a whole lot of reinforcement here, but when he decides that he wants to come with me. Yes, see? Oops, oh my goodness. My clothes are falling down. I'll just grab Bert. Bertie. Yeah. I was in my car. Yeah. Lulu. Karen's just going to grab Bert. Hey, Luby. Hi, Luby. So Lulu's quite old and you're quite old and deaf, aren't you? But you've got great recall. You've got great recall when I call you Lou. Hey, Lou. So the yellow is blind, deaf, or some kind of disability, which is really important. The yellow is a fantastic lead to have. Good girl. You're a good one. You're such a good girl, aren't you, Lou? Good girl. I know we're not doing any demos with you today, sweetheart. Come on. Oh, Bertie. Thank you. Karen's got you. Karen's got you. Good boy. So Bertie has had very little training. I know that because he's my friend's dog, and a lot of my friends don't train their dogs as much as I would like them to. Good boy, buddy. Good one. Nice walking. Nice walking. Yep, we're going to go over here. So I don't know if you saw then when Buster just kind of came forward because he saw I had the chicken, Bert just gave a little sideways tilt of his head, which is a body language to say, I come in peace, dude. And he just moved himself a little bit more towards you. And that's really subtle body language that, that a lot of dog parents miss. Good boy, Papa. Good boy. Good one. Nice one. Nice little lip flick with the tongue. Good boy. You've been such a good boy, aren't you? Come. Good boy. Oops, dropped your lead. Good boy. Good boy, Bertie. Now, let's see how we go with... Good boy. I know, he had a sausage. Sorry, mate. Now, I'm just going to... Can you leave it? You're a great dog. You're a great dog. Can you sit for me? Good one. Hang out there. I'm going to get you one of these. Yeah. Look at this. Apparently on the packaging it says this is a mince pie without the pastry. Bert. Good boy. Leave it. Good boy. Good boy. Leave it. Good boy. Excellent. Leave it. Yes. Good boy. Good boy, Papa. Really good, Bertie. Really good. I'm just going to throw some of this over there as a decoy. You wait, Papa. You have that. Good boy. Leave it. No, too hard. So that's what you do in the training, because I'm like, it would have been amazing if he did leave it, because he's never done this ever. But that is how we get started. So, and that's what we're aiming for. So when you're out and about, and that's like a seal or a bird's nest or something, waiting. Oh, puppy, come with me. Good boy, come with me. Good one. This way. This way. Excellent leaving. Ah, look, what's it? Leave it. No, that's why I go like this, isn't it? Leave it. Good boy. Good boy. You're a great dog. Good boy. Leave it. Okay. Leave it. Okay. Good, good. I'm going to give that to him because you saw, I don't know if you saw, I saw he just inhibited himself a bit with that one. So he didn't try to go forward for me to say, leave it. He's like, I'm getting the game. I'm getting the game. Come around this way, buddy. I know. It's chicken now. Leave it. Yes. Good boy. You're a great dog, Bertie. Now we're going to do the leave it, okay, buddy? Oh, lovely. Leave it. Okay, good boy. Really good. Such a good boy. No, yeah, none. Skills, Stacey. We're using science to train the animals, and I'm using science, and so you get, better, faster, more positive results by doing that. Just putting a plug in. Leave it, buddy. Okay, good boy. Nope. Yeah, yes, I guess I'd have to say. I think when you've done it for a long time, you probably don't. I am using other things that I'm unaware of. But yeah, that's why they pay me the big bucks. Not really, eh, Bertie? Yes, because he's a new dog to me, and I am emphasising the leave it, then I am doing that. But that is probably how I say it to my puppy as well. And however you do, actually that's a key point, however you do speak is how you should speak to your dog, because you're always around that. So I know a particular trainer who just naturally is a little bit grumpy and has done an amazing job with her dog out and about huge distractions with, am I allowed to say it? Get the fuck inside. But when she says that, the dog is like, yes, mum, woo, because it's not said with animosity. You know, there's no animosity, and she's not angry at the dog, and there's no aversives being used, but it's just, those are the words that have been used. Oh God, sorry, mate. Yes. Sorry, Lou.
Or I just need to train him so he knows that when I yell at him like that, he's going to get a massive amount of reinforcement. You know, that's in the first reinforcement.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome. And it's also good for me, right? Which is maybe an
But he's
yell at my dog.
He's so happy. He does. His tail wags and he jumps around. But good boy. Good one. Good boy, Eddie.
So thanks everyone for coming along and sharing this with us. We would love it if you guys could spread the word. And Petey and Doc have both ensured they will be available, and they would love to hear any questions, or if anyone needs any help, they're there to answer any questions. So if you haven't already, there's a keepy sippy cup for you over here. And for media, we've got some media kit bags just around the corner here on the table. Otherwise, thank you so much for everyone for coming along today.
Oh, which I think we probably overlooked it in our finance talk today, is how to pitch it and get hold of the lead and learn a little bit more about it.
Like there was a presumption that everyone already knew about the lead, what they were, the different colours.
So apologies.
Could I take that one? Because I did it this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
It literally takes 5 minutes. So if you haven't done it already, we just go onto the Doc website. If you literally Google and Doc lead the way, it takes you to the link. There's a short blurb on what the main things you can do on the beach are to make a difference. And there's a link there, takes you to the quiz. Spoiler alert, it's pretty easy. You go through the quiz, takes you 4.5 minutes. And then once you've completed that, you're basically approved to buy a lead. So you do have to earn it. Cheapest chips, I think, what, $11? Yep.
And the colours of the lead, one on you.
No. So if we start off, no, you're good. I think I got this one. So if we start off with green, it basically just means that your dog is well socialized and generally going to be okay in most situations. If we drop down to the orange, it means that we're not 100% okay in all situations. So if you see an orange, you just want to keep your distance initially and ask permission, and you want to manage your dog. So if you see an orange and your dog is off lead, best to put on lead. A yellow lead is basically for those dogs who are either deaf or blind or just have some situation which they're a little bit compromised. So again, we want to keep our distance, be nice and soft when we approach, and be invited to approach. Don't go up to them initially. And then our red lead, which we don't have any around here today, those are the ones that are basically just saying, watch out. So if we aren't socialized, if we aren't trustworthy, we just want to steer clear, and 20 meters is basically the keep safe distance in your head that you want to keep clear. The other one which I quite liked was as soon as you hit the sand, have your lead in hand. So as soon as you're on the sand, Yep, we've got our lead, and ideally you want to be walking down to the wet sand limit because you're that much further away from the coastal wildlife, which is usually going to be up around the dunes. It's a fascinating website. We should all go and have a look. Yeah. So there are iPads just over here on the table if anyone's keen to give that quiz a go, literally 4.5 minutes. Or it's as easy as having a look in the kit bag, which will have the links there for you, or just doc, lead the way, and you can do it at home, but definitely well worthwhile.
Associating food with that creature because maybe leave it often to be a treat for it, but in this case it's a bird and we want to, you know what I mean, that connection?
I do know what you mean. How it works is the reinforcement comes from you and the food. And sorry, I did actually bring toys and balls as well because it doesn't have to be food. And another thing you can do is teach your dog to carry something, which means also they're less likely to be kind of using their mouth for other things. But how it works is the behavior that's reinforced is the stepping back from, say, the bird. So they're not going to be thinking, oh, I've stepped back. Now the bird is my reinforcer. Okay, yeah. Good question.
Me as well?
No, it's more the association with the cue. So the reinforcement is coming, the timing of giving the cue is definitely important. If your dog is in full prey drift, so they're super hyper aroused physically, when they're in that fight or flight mode, your prefrontal cortex is shut off, you stop listening, they actually can't hear you calling them. So that's a really important thing. It's not that they're even ignoring you, they can't hear you because this is their primary drive. And that is when it's too late, you know, and that's when you need to have the long lines on, the lead on, and run. You know, I see people like, I'm like, get your dog. I'm like, go and get your dog, you know, run and get your dog. And if needs be, even if you've got handfuls of food or whatever, chuck it at your dog so that at least there's that distraction, the smell, the food, to get them away from the other animals, or sea slugs, or a very lovely dog that's very dear to my heart. Found some ribs on the beach that someone had obviously discarded, perforated the intestines, died. Broke so many hearts. So, and he wasn't a scavenger, you know, he wasn't a scavenger type dog. It was just there, and he was like, oh, great. So, yeah.
Gosh, Maria, I could listen to your advice all day, to be honest. Yes, exactly. It's basically just a free consult. You got free training. It's brilliant.
Yep. One at a time. One at a time. You really want to proof the behavior with one of them, and then with the next one, and with otherwise it's so hard on you. And then with two together at a time, and then the three of them together. That takes up more time, but that's the way to get success. And if depending on what their relationship is, you may find that there is one dog that the other dogs learn from. I used to have two dogs, and my male dog was super easy to teach. He picks up really quickly. My female dog would learn she would learn better from him than me, I hate to say. So I would always teach him first. She'd be like, oh, I can do that. And I'd be like, okay, out the way. And then she would do it. So if there's a relationship like that, you can do that like that as well. Yeah. Oh, good.
And have something to eat. Yeah.